just a little bit of background. I'm besides the professional puppeteer, I also record audio fiction for people like Orson Scott Card, Elizabeth Bear, Cory Doctorow, and then I back in college, I used to compete in this, and so a lot of what I'm going to be going through is what they taught me when I was in competition. Yes, you can do competitive reading. The reason this is important is that when you are starting out, when you're going to conventions, even before you have something sold or published, you can still do a reading, and it's a good way to promote yourself. The problem is that nothing will kill a story faster than a bad reading. A good reading, on the other hand, can make bad things. I mean, part of my job, not with any of the people that I've listed, but with other authors that I have read for, part of my job is to make things not sound like crap. And you can do that with a really good reading. But primarily, you just don't want to kill your story. So what we're going to talk about first are the common mistakes that people make. And if you can avoid those, you're better than most readers that you will hear. Then I'm going to move you to the next level. The common mistakes, number one mistake is volume. And that's that people simply aren't loud enough. Now, I am amplified just a little bit, but I'm briefly going to turn this off. And you still don't have a problem hearing me, probably. The reason that people do this whole I am very quiet thing is that mentally what's happening is your body is going, well, I'm talking to the person closest to me. And so if I'm talking to the people in the front row, you know, it's like, that's not very far away. Your body knows how to project. It already knows how to be loud. But if you think about the people closest to you as the people that you're talking about, your volume is going to adjust to that. So what you need to do is you need to think about speaking to the back wall. Now, as I'm talking, you can hear a little bit of a bounce. Do you hear that, where my voice hits the back wall and comes back towards me? That's what you want to listen to. So I'm going to make you do oh, you're all eating. I'm not going to make you do an exercise. There's something called projection, which is basically how to speak loudly without hurting yourself. There's a muscle here called the diaphragm, which pulls air into your lungs, and it helps support. And if you put your hands on your back as you inhale, you'll be able to feel your diaphragm expand. People talk about breathing from the stomach. Diaphragm goes all the way around. So what you want to do is inhale, and it'll feel like there's an inner tube inhaling right under the bottom of your rib cage. You feel that? Now, if I just exhale with I'm going to do ha, and I'm going to use my body to press the air out. Ha! It's fairly loud. I'm not yelling. My throat is still relaxed, but I can be heard in a pretty big room. What I want you to imagine when you read is that you're reading to the back wall. People in the front, they're lovely people. They don't matter. They'll be able to hear you anyway. So, be loud. That's the number one thing. Speed. People talk too fast when they read. You should speak about half the speed that you think you should. The ideal, golden ideal, is an average of 150 words per minute, which is about how fast I'm talking right now. It does not sound too slow to you. To me, it feels like I'm talking like this. It's really mind-numbingly insane to talk slow. The reason you want to talk slow, the metaphor I like to use is, think about driving on a twisty road. Say you've got a mountain cabin. You drive that every day, commuting. The first time you drive it, you think, I'm going to die! This is the twistiest road in the world! You drive it every day, and then someone is following you. You're taking them to your mountain cabin for the first time, and they're following you in their car, and you're like, why are they driving so slow? It's because they're thinking, I'm going to die! This is the twistiest road in the world! You know your story. You know what's going to happen next. The audience not only does not know the story, they can't back up and read it again. So it's important that you go slow enough that they can comprehend what you're saying. The thing that you missed is be loud. That's all.
Oh, well, that's not a problem for me.
The third major problem that people run into is that they drone. You've heard the speaker. And then he ran down the hall with the gun drawn, and the shots were fired, blood went everywhere. And the audience is dead at that point. You've killed the story. Humans are animals. As soon as we recognize a sound, we are hardwired to tune it out so that we can focus on the dangerous stuff. If you drone, people will recognize your voice, and even if they don't want to, their body will start tuning it out as unimportant. The other aspect of droning is to remember, or the way to combat it, is to remember that writing developed as a way to record the spoken language. So don't forget that you are telling a story when you're reading, and that you need to speak naturally. What people tend to do is they tend to pick it up and they tend to read it. They tend to think about the words on the page rather than the story that they're trying to tell. So what you missed was be loud and slow down, 150 words per minute. Yeah. So this is, again, a place where your body already knows how to tell a good story. I mean, you can take something like, so I was at the grocery store and I had this cart with this wheel and it was just like, reet, and it was driving me crazy. You're using a lot of different dynamics in that, but if you wrote that down and you read it, so I was at the grocery store and the wheel was going squeak, 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 and it was driving me crazy. What you've just done there is you've basically lied to your audience with your voice, because your voice is saying this is not important information. When you're telling the story, tell the story. Think about the intentions. So those are the three things that you need to avoid. Be loud, slow down, don't drone. That's the basics. Now we're going to move you to the next level. The biggest place that people fall down when they are looking at doing a reading, the first mistake that they make, is picking the wrong selection. You want to pick something that suits your voice. So what you're looking for, when I say something suitable to be read aloud, what do I mean? Primarily, you're looking for a small cast of characters. The more characters you have, and the narrator is one of those characters, the harder it will be to vocally distinguish between them. Unless you're Mel Blanc, 4 characters, including the narrator, is probably your safe upper end. This is going to vary, obviously, but generally speaking, that's about how many different voices you can distinguish and the audience can recognize as being distinct. Within that, it's easier if your characters are disparate in terms of type. For instance, a man and a woman are easier to distinguish than 2 women. So trying to pick a selection where there are very different types of characters within that body of text. Second, you want a self-contained scene. So the audience is getting a beginning, a middle, and an end, even if it's part of a larger whole. By the way, if you do not want to take notes and just concentrate on eating, all of this is on my website, almost verbatim. MaryRobinetteKowal.com, and then click on Fiction, and under Fiction you'll see a section that says Reading Aloud. It's not on the drop-down menu. You actually have to go to the Fiction page. The whole URL is long. MaryRobinetteKowal.com. So second, you want to, yes?
Sorry, how do you spell that last name?
K-O-W, I took my name tag off. K-O-W-A-L.
Thank you.
Second, you want a self-contained scene. So the audience gets a beginning, middle, and an end, even if it's part of a larger whole. Now, if you're doing a reading to sell your book, there is something to be said for a cliffhanger. But you need to make sure that it's actually a cliffhanger and not just a random stopping point. You know, there's a big difference between she was running down the hill, tripped, and tumbled over the cliff. If you'd like to get my story, it's available at. And she went through the door and opened the door to the grocery store. Great. Unless you've built a lot of emotional excitement about that grocery store, that's a random stopping point. Third, the language with which it is written. There are some things that lend themselves to being read aloud, and there are some things that really don't. Office memos, by and large, are very difficult to read aloud with any degree of interest. What you're looking for specifically is language that lends itself to an almost onomatopoeic sense. It doesn't actually have to be onomatopoeia. Rudyard Kipling's Just So stories are an excellent example of this. They were written specifically to be read aloud. They've got beautiful rhythm and a sense of onomatopoeia that makes it very dynamic. So when I say almost onomatopoeic, what I'm really talking about are words that you can linger over and play with. For instance, this is an example of something that is not onomatopoeic in any fashion. He jogged to the train station 3 blocks from his home. There's nothing wrong with that sentence. It's a perfectly constructed sentence. But there's not a lot you can do with it. On the other hand, they ate wild sheep roasted on the hot stones. You can do a lot with that. Hot, for instance, is not a true onomatopoeic word because it doesn't make any sound, whereas sizzle does. But it is a word that you can twist in a lot of different ways. For instance, do I have volunteers? Ha-ha! What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to say hot, thinking about the following definition, and make the word mean that. Sweltering.
Hot.
Can anyone make it sound very sexy?
Hot.
No, that's creepy.
How about spicy? Yeah. Excellent. How about tense, like a tense situation? Hot. Ooh, it's a hot situation. So that's one word, and you can make it mean a lot of different things just by the way you say it. So those are the kinds of things that I'm asking you to look for in your writing, words that you can twist and change. The word wild, also really good word. So let's say you found a selection with a small cast of characters in a self-contained scene with an almost onomatopoeic sense to the language. These are the stories that will sound good when read aloud. But are you the right person to read the story? Does it suit your voice? If it's a first-person story, you should, in an ideal world, be the same gender as the narrator. Because again, you are lying to your audience in that they have to constantly adjust to the fact that I am a woman reading a man's role. You can do it. Absolutely. I have. I generally preface to the audience before I start reading that this is written from the point of view of a man, because otherwise they will assume that it's a woman because that's what they're hearing. It's just going to be hard for them to get past the audio cues. Even in a third-person story, be aware that the narrator voice will often echo the thoughts of the main character. So picking a selection where the gender matches is going to be easier on the audience. And there are people who can get away with cross-gender roles, but it's not easy, so you should know your limits. It's not something that you cannot do, just be aware of the cost of doing it. Character voices. You don't have to do character voices, but they do help the audience, particularly in a dialogue-heavy scene. It's just easier if you are distinguishing between the characters. The human voice is very flexible, so we're going to look at some ways that you can manipulate it. I do want to remind you, though, that the voice is a muscle, and it can be hurt in exactly the same ways that you can hurt any other part of your body. So if you're doing something and it hurts, stop.